So it's lesson 4. The quiz was due at 5 p.m. yesterday, just getting the question, and it was in the lesson 4 folder. So I do put a checklist in each week telling you exactly what you need to do over the next week. So this was up, it's usually the bottom item. So in last week it said, asked you by Wednesday to please submit lab 1, which most of you did, and complete the quiz, which was in the lesson 4 folder. So please make sure you're reading the instructions carefully, because they will tell you where things are and when they're due. So I want to go over assignment 1. We're going to start working with the E in the mean stack. We're going to start working with Express today, and we'll work with Express in 2 ways. We'll kind of do some hand-coded work with Express, like a little hello world sample. And then we're going to get into using the Express generator, which is a scaffolding tool, kind of like an ASP.NET project template in Visual Studio, although maybe not quite as full-featured. And then we're also going to look at HBS, which is the handlebar syntax for our views. And then we'll also look at routing. So I'm going to go over assignment 1, which you will have 2 weeks to do. It's due in 2 weeks on Wednesday, the 24th at 5 o'clock. Okay, so just so you know, again, everything will be due at 5 o'clock the day before class. So what are you going to do? You're going to use Node and Express. You don't need to use MongoDB or Angular for assignment 1. And you're going to build a personal portfolio site using Node and Express. You're going to use handlebars as the templating engine. Will work with Express and handlebars today. And you need to deploy your site to a live cloud service. And I found in working with Node, the easiest service to use is actually Heroku. So we're going to sign up, and hopefully today we'll build a new application with Express, and we'll go through deploying it to Heroku. Heroku works similarly to Azure in that it allows continuous deployment from GitHub. So we can push our code to GitHub, we can connect our Heroku website to GitHub, and it will automatically update anytime we push a new commit. Unlike Azure, it doesn't give us credits. So the free Heroku service, there's no limit on it. The limit is you can only do 5 sites for free on the subdomain. So we don't have to worry about credits. You have to do your own work. It's not a group project. Okay? You can use external code that you find online or somewhere else, but I ask you if there's a few rules around this, please. If you are using external code, make sure that you document it. You put in a link and a comment. This is where the code comes from. That's number 1. Number 2, your external code shouldn't be any more than 10%. So in other words, you can't just find somebody who's done a whole website and copy the whole thing. But you can take a piece of code from somewhere else. So you do need to comment it. And also, please just send it to me first and have me approve it. Say, hey, this is what I want to use. Is it okay? Here's the link. And here's how I want to use it in my assignment. So we may have a code review after, where I would expect you can explain any of the code you put in your project. So I'm going to show you a few sample portfolios from previous students to give you an idea . So here's Andy's portfolio. He's still got it running. This was done quite a long time ago. So Andy's an international student from India. So he talks a bit about himself. He lists his skills. Yeah, this is back from 2015. And some of his projects. He also has his social links, it's important that most importantly here, you don't need to link to your personal like Facebook page but you should at least have links to your GitHub profile as well as your LinkedIn page. So there's one example. Here's Jess's portfolio, right? So she's got her skills. And then she featured a number of her projects. So she's showing off, linking to things that she did. And yes, shout out to all my fantastic students from Vietnam. I have another great student from Vietnam in first year again this year, Felix. So this is Envy's portfolio from last year. So how to reach him, a little bit about him and his skill set. And here are all of his projects, which he tagged. So this is also, he's got his social links here to GitHub, to LinkedIn. He actually did a little blog in here as well. So this is Envy's from last year. He also did and all of them you're not required to, but they all actually got a custom domain name, which looks more professional than running it under like a Heroku subdomain. Okay, so these are all really good portfolios. So in looking at these, it should be fairly self-evident, but I just want to be clear, what's the point of this assignment? Why am I asking you to do this? Aside from letting me assess your skills with Node, Express, and handlebars, what's the value for you?
It's to show our skills and what we've done to future employers.
Thank you, Maggie. I couldn't have said that better myself. Excellent answer, right? This is part of your professional online presence. So the idea here is you are selling yourself to employers. And consistently what employers are telling us is from development students, they're interested in three things. They want to see your portfolio where they can actually look at samples of your work. They want to see your code on GitHub so they get a sense of what languages do you know and what does your code look like. And they want to see your LinkedIn profile, that you have a professional presence on LinkedIn. The time and time again, employers, and I think one of the ones who emphasized this the most was actually Sean at Tree Frog. He said, these are the first things we look at. We didn't even look at resumes. We can tell more from a potential developer, designer, from their portfolio, their LinkedIn profile, and GitHub than we can from a 1 or 2 page paper resume. Right? So in a couple of weeks, you're going to have created a professional portfolio. So you can show off projects you've done in school or outside of school. Doesn't matter. Anything you've built. Okay. Well, Maggie, that's one option. Yep. Another option is even if you don't have to link to the full site, but you could show screenshots, right? If you have something that's partly working, put in a description and put in a screenshot or two. That works as well, right? It doesn't have to be, so it could just be a screenshot and a description of the project. That's fair. So that's one way around that. Yeah, you can include personal projects, school projects, absolutely. But I want you to be thinking about, as you're in your last semester, any work you're doing, it's a potential tool to help you get a job. So treat it, I know can be somewhat time consuming, but treat it as such.
Yeah, so about personal project, like I'm not even sure that if my project is impressive enough to show, like.
Well, again, you may not have to show the whole thing, Hung. even a screenshot and a description of what it is and what technologies you used, that might be enough. You don't have to link for someone to see the whole thing.
Okay.
Right? Give them one screenshot and a description.
Right.
If it's not complete.
Yeah.
So you should have 4 pages, a home page, an about page, just talks a little bit about yourself, a projects page that shows your work, and a contact me page. So somebody would know how to get in touch with you. So you're going to use Node and Express, and you'll use handlebars to build the views. And you'll use Express, kind of like we did last week with Connect, to handle the routing. And we'll do this in class today. You can create the project using the Express generator. So this is Node's Express scaffolding tool. So we'll go over doing all of this today. And it sets up folders just like Visual Studio does for JavaScript and CSS, as well as things like images. Yeah, Express is kind of neat. It's like a quick and easy way to get a Node site up and running with just a couple of commands. So we're going to use HBS for templating. There are different types of templates we can use in Node. The default is called Pug, but we're not going to use it. We'll look at why later in class today. You should have a shared header and footer. So we'll go over how to do that. And your footer should include links to your GitHub and LinkedIn pages. And then you will publish this to a cloud service. As I said, I recommend Heroku because it's free. You'll use GitHub. Make sure you're committing regularly and to a private repository and invite me. Everyone knows how to do that. There's nothing new there. You have some options for bonus marks too if you want. One of the things you can do is you can, instead of using HBS templating on the front end, you can use Angular or React if you want, but that's self-taught. Yeah, Justin, we'll talk about the domain name. That's a good idea. I'll show you. So if you get your contact form to actually work and send a message, there's bonus marks. You can create an external document that includes wireframes, an explanation of the technology used, and a brief style guide for a couple bonus marks. I probably have a sample of this somewhere. Let's see if I've got a student sample. Bear with me for a second. I think I do have an example of what this might look like. Actually, maybe I don't have the style guide here. But if you create that kind of document, you can find a template online. Whoops, there are some bonus marks. And you can attach a full domain name. Again, this was something I added as a bonus mark because employers were telling us the portfolios are a lot more effective if you have a personalized domain name. Now, yes, you have to pay for it, but as Justin said, you can get one on GoDaddy for $3. If you have a GitHub student account, you can also get one for a year through Namecheap. Comes with the GitHub student pack. Yeah, $3 a year. So it's absolutely not required. I'm not requiring you to spend any money. But if you can run your portfolio and get your own domain name, again, this is going to help you sell yourself. It also tells an employer that you know how to register a domain name and how to point it to a server, set the DNS. So there's some value here in doing that. It's just much more polished and professional. So if you do that, there's bonus marks available for you. But it is not required. Yep, $3 for the first year. Oh yeah, I had another one here. Anyway, I think you get the idea from the samples that I've shown you. So to submit, just give me the GitHub link and the portfolio link. So there's 4 marks for the interface and design, 4 marks making sure there's no errors, 20 marks basically for the site structure and setup using the Express generator. A few marks, whoops, I'll just update this. So I'll just update this date. So by next week's class, I'd like to see at least 2 commits made over the next week. To get full marks, you need to do at least two commits in each week. I'll just update that document. Okay, so I want you to develop a professional portfolio web presence. I may even have a couple other. Why is this hidden? My apologies. I need to make this available for you. So it's now available under the Assignments tab. You couldn't find it because I hid it. So it's there now. I may even have a couple other ones from, yeah, I do actually have a few others that are from 2018 we could look at. I don't know if these are still online or not. They might not be. So when you use Heroku, you're going to get a subdomain at herokuapp.com. So here was Heywan's. I love her little HTML navigation, very creative. So she showed off a bunch of her projects, including, so this was her assignment from server-side scripting. Here is Yuta's portfolio. So Yuta is working in Newmarket at Goose Digital. And I believe I just posted in our LinkedIn group that they're hiring. Goose is hiring. A number of our former students are working there. It's a great company. Not sure. Oh, he's on Azure, so that'll probably be gone. And Raj, who is also an international student from India, we'll see if his portfolio. Oh, no, here's Utah's. It's still running, amazingly. So he did a great little animation, showed off a bunch of projects. And we'll see if we can load Raj's portfolio. So again, we can see the projects. So some of these were class projects, like for Scott. I think you guys probably did this Automoblocks project, the ASP.NET project that we did in class and his own. Contact. So these I'd consider really good portfolios. So you have a couple weeks to work on this. And then you'll have a portfolio site that you own and you can add to it over time. As you can see, a lot of these students, they've kept their portfolios up to date, even though they're now graduated and working in the industry. Are there any questions about the requirements?
So if we don't want to use the front end framework, Angular or React, so we can use whatever we want.
No, by default, what you can use is what is going to come with Express. We're going to use HBS in class.
Okay.
So we're going to do this today so you see how to use it.
Okay. Nice.
Okay. Do we have to have that attached sample? Yeah, what I would suggest, Maggie, is add a few projects you've done, but with the idea that you might flesh out the portfolio, like the project section more fully later. So I'd at least add a few projects now, and then other things you do even this semester, you may want to add when they're finished.
Okay, but the main thing is just to make sure that the site itself is working properly.
Right.
Okay.
And you should at least be able to feature at least a few projects.
Okay.
Doesn't have, you don't have to show 20, but I would think you'd at least want to show probably a minimum of, say, 3.
Okay.
I would advise. Justin, should you use your first name and last name as a domain? For a personal portfolio, that's probably a good idea. And that's what, Andy and Jess and Envy, that's what they all did. Was use their own name because, again, it's simple to get there, simple for somebody to find. And you don't have to keep the domain, if you don't want in the future, but, you may move around in your career. So having a portfolio isn't a bad idea. I have no idea. I guess it would have depend on what options you picked. Are there any other questions about the assignment requirements? All right. Okay, so let's dive into Express. So these slides are up there. They're up on Blackboard in the Lesson 4 folder for you to review. So we're going to talk about Express. Don't worry, the slide deck's not too long. I'm going to give you a quick overview, and then we'll play around with it. So we're going to use Express. We're going to use HBS for templating. And then we'll also look at how do we publish an app to Heroku. We'll try and get all that done today. So Express is basically a substitute for using the Node HTTP library to start a web server. So it's built on top of Connect, and underneath it uses Connect. So we used Connect last week for things like starting the server, listening on a port, and mapping HTTP requests. So it works sort of similar. So we're going to try a really basic Express application. It's pretty similar to what we did last week, but instead of using Connect, we've used Express. So we're going to try out this sample in a few minutes. We're going to install Express, download it from NPM and install it. If we have time, yes, Justin, we will. We're going to make a new site and publish it today. We make a new Express application, and then we route any requests in the root to send a hello world response. And we listen on port 3000. So almost the same code as what we were doing last week with Connect. So we'll try this sample out. And this sample comes directly, I'll show you the Express homepage in a minute. So we deal with the app object, which is the instance of the Express application. We're dealing with HTTP request and response. And like Connect, we have the ability to use the next object as well if we need it. We could skip over that. Express also has a scaffolding tool. So it's kind of like a project template in Visual Studio. And this tool is called the Express Generator. So later in the class and for your assignment, we're going to install the Express Generator globally, and then we can use it to scaffold new projects. Now, when we use the generator, it uses by default this template engine called Pug. Pug is really neat. It's a cool way to code. It kind of gives us all kinds of shortcuts for generating HTML, but it's also really difficult to debug Pug. So I used to use it in teaching this class, and students found it too challenging to debug their views. So instead, we're going to use the handlebars or HBS option. Handlebars is much easier to debug and format, and it also is very close in syntax to Angular, which we're going to use later in the term. So going from Pug to Angular, they look totally different. If we start with handlebars and then move to Angular, they look a lot more similar syntactically. So I've found from a learning perspective, using HBS instead of Pug for our views is a good idea. So here are the commands that we would run, and we'll do this later, to create a new project using the Express generator. We'd type the command Express, we'd give our application a name, and then we want to set the view engine as HBS, which is short for handlebars. And we'll look at why it's called handlebars later. We then would go into our new project and we do npm I. This would install all the dependencies we need for the project. And our project looks something like this when we use the generator. So here I ran this example yesterday. So I ran the command express new app name with HBS. So it creates a new app name folder. Then inside it creates a public folder with 3 subfolders: JavaScript, images, and style sheets. It creates a roots folder, which are like the controllers. It creates a views folder, and then a couple other files, including the package.json that we're already familiar with, and a bin folder that's actually kind of like .NET, where it compiles our JavaScript code and stores it in the bin. And our app.js, that's kind of like our special startup file. So it looks sort of similar in a way to what an ASP.NET project template looks like. And you can see in views, all of the view files have an HBS extension. But our controllers are JavaScript files. So we'll go through these few examples together. That is the front. It's like roots index.js. No, it's not a view. Anything in roots, those are the controllers. So that's actually kind of like the home controller equivalent in ASP.NET. Barak, by default, yes. So the way that the structure works, the controllers go in a folder called roots. I hate that name roots. I think it's very confusing because we're using an MVC pattern. So I'm going to rename my roots folder to controllers. Yeah, so here's the home page, views index.hbs. That's the home page. And it also gives us a layout template, also like Visual Studio does, right? We had that shared layout, CSHTML. HBS gives us kind of a similar layout template file. So we could add shared elements like a navigation bar, footer, and they can be shared among the various views. Good question, Barak. You're absolutely on the right track with that. So let's try this simple example first. So this comes right from the Express homepage, which is expressjs.com. So it tells us how to install Express. It has a few simple samples, including a hello world. So we're just going to try their sample. We can do it within the existing Node application we've been working with, but when we use the generator, it's going to build a new project. And you'll use the generator to build the project for your assignment. So this will be the last kind of manual file we work with, and we'll be building a new project after this. So let's open up our code editor. I'll open up WebStorm. So open up WebStorm or Visual Studio Code or whatever. I just need to pause for just a moment. Okay, so we're going to try our simple express example, and then we'll take a break before we come back and use the generator. So let's make a new file here, which we will call, I'll make a new JavaScript file. I will call it express. So we just get a blank JavaScript file. So here's the code we're going to run. We're going to require express, create a new application, write a hello world message in the root, and listen on a port. So I've got a slightly modified version of this. So we need to do one thing first before we can code any of this. What do we need to do before we can write any of the code? Thank you, Justin. We need to install Express, right? So it will get added to our list of node modules. So I'll open up my terminal, and we can just run the command npm I express. I short for install. So once I install Express, it should get added to our list of node modules. Which it does. I click on my node modules folder. We now have Express here. So run npm I express. And now we can use Express to write our hello world code. So we're going to link to the Express dependency that we installed via npm. So we'll require Express. We will create a new Express application. So we create a new application. We don't need the new keyword in JavaScript. If this was C# or Java, we'd need the word new in front of Express, but we don't here. We want to map requests at the root URL to send the text response. No, you can use them. So we call, with Express, we call app.use. And you'll notice it's saying, okay, what's the root? So what's the URL path? And then what's the function? What's the callback function that runs at that root? So our root is just /. And now we have our callback with request and response with our fat arrow expression. So this is, we talked several weeks ago, this syntax is weird, but it should start to be looking not quite so bizarre now that we've used it for now 4 weeks in a row. So all we want to do here is send a response. res.send, and we'll just print out hello world. So whenever we get a request at the root URL, we're just going to send this response. We're not even going to worry about an HTTP header or anything like that. And then we're just going to call app.listen on port 3000. Looked like you may have just gotten kicked out, huh? And we'll print a message to the console. So there's our code. I'll throw it up on Pastebin, but it is also in the slides that are actually on Blackboard. So here's the code we're using. You can grab them. So this is slide 5. It's in the lesson 4 folder. It's also on the Express website. But I'll put it up here as well if anybody needs it.
So after we install in Express, that's all what we had, right?
Yep. So we installed Express with npm I Express.
Yes.
And
then those code.
Yep. We linked to it. We created a new Express application. We map any requests at the root so that they'll send a hello world response.
Yes.
We listen. Justin, the only reason would be if you had some other service running on port 3000. In my own experience with Node, I've never changed it. I've always just let it run on the default. So when we use the generator later today, it's automatically going to set the port as 3000. So you don't have to do it here on 3000. You can put it anything you want. But basically, you'd only have to change it if there's a conflict. So all our code is done. There's one other thing we should do. No, because it has to be specified. I said when we use the generator, it uses 3000 by default, but it's still coded in as 3000. Just the generator will automatically set it to 3000. But we're not using the generator yet. This is just hand-coded Express. So if you just use listen, the server won't start. The port is a required value. So if we want to run this with Nodemod, but we want our Express page to run, we have to make one change in the application. What do we have to change? It's not in this file. We have to make a change to one of our other files. Which file in our project? Thank you, Janelle. Right, we're going to go to package.json. That's right, Hung. And actually, the word we have to change, it's already highlighted here. So we want to change the main. Instead of starting with server, we want to now start our application with Express. So I changed line 5 in my package.json. So now we can go to our terminal and try Nodemod. So it says Express server running on port 3000. Good. We'll put the command in the chat, but I think everybody probably knows it by now, which is just Nodemod. And now if we go to localhost 3000, we get a hello world response. Right? Anything that starts with a slash, we're mapping basically all requests to that same response, which is okay. So it's very similar to our connect file. if we look at the code between the two, here was our code using connect. Really almost the exact same. We're just using express this time instead of connect. So now you tried the command npm I express. Try that command try it again. I may have to help you sort that out in a few minutes. All right, so try it again and see if that works. We may need to look at it in a little more detail. Okay, it's 5-1. So this is a good place. This is all we are going to do with this simple express example. So we are going to take a 10-minute break here. And if you have a minute, feel free to add to our job board of local companies that do web development and that you guys should explore. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break here and we will be back.